Welcome. I'm Graham Peely. We appreciate you joining our first Atlas Fireside Chat. Why most AI initiatives fail and how to make yours stick. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to have an honest conversation about something most leadership programs don't touch. Why so many AI initiatives stall after launch and what the leaders inside them can actually do about it. I'm joined by Ash Sadiq with Atlas, and we're fortunate to have guests Christoph Eagle and Patricia Remical. Patricia is a fractional chief AI officer and chief product officer with 25 plus years building enterprise SaaS products and AI programs. At Fortium Partners, she designs and deploys end-to-end AI governance frameworks. Christoph is a partner at Fortium with over 30 years of senior IT leadership experience at complex global enterprises. He has driven large-scale transformation, outsourcing initiatives, and M&A integrations at public and private companies. Ash, let's kick off the conversation.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Graham, and thank you everybody for joining us. Christoph, Patricia, thank you so much for joining us. I think this is going to be an amazing conversation because AI and AI implementations, and especially getting in the ROI and the peace of mind of these initiatives is on everybody's mind. I love the fact that you are in the field, in the trenches with clients working on AI initiatives. And I'd love to start off by giving you the floor, Patricia. Just kind of give us a sense of what are you and your clients talking about, challenges with, and what are some of the top topics that you are handling right now with clients?
Um, Thank you. So I would say things have definitely changed in the last like 6 months. The technology is moving so quickly. So like last year, a lot of companies were just getting their feet wet. They were starting to build AI pilots. And of course, then you started to hear about all of these companies, all of these pilot projects that couldn't actually cross the chasm, so to speak, and get put into production. And so companies weren't seeing the ROI that they were expecting. This year, I think companies are realizing that there's a lot more they have to learn about what it takes to deploy AI at scale and to deploy AI responsibly. And it's a lot more than about learning the technology. It's a lot about, figuring out how to design your human in the loop process, figuring out how you're going to be monitoring AI for drift, how you're going to be doing incident response on a production system, how you're going to, continuously train these models as the technology changes so quickly. So I think the conversation has shifted from how do we, what are our use cases and how do we use the technology to address them, to how do we now take this and deploy it at scale and deploy it responsibly?
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think that's a great segue for us to go to Christoph. I love this idea of course, at scale and responsibly. And I wonder, what are you seeing? I know you've led initiatives for large companies across Europe, the US, and I'd love to understand right now, as you're working with clients, how are you helping them handle this idea of doing AI at scale and responsibly at the same time, given the fact that it's very probabilistic right now?
Yeah, first of all, a lot of what Patricia said before affects us fractional CIOs and CEOs as well. But before I go there, first of all, I wanted to thank Graham for the kind introduction and both of you for having us here today and share our experience. Last year, MIT published their State of AI in Business study, and it claimed that about 95% of Gen AI initiatives fail to deliver on their desired ROI. I kind of remember we had a similar situation a couple of decades ago, maybe three or so, about ERP implementations failing right and left, although I don't know if the percentage was ever that high that was reported. But since then, we've learned quite a bit. And with every new technology since, and in this case AI, everything seems to change, but what I would call the fundamentals remain unchanged.
Yeah.
So while I can't talk too much with the time that we have about how AI is different, other than it dramatically increases velocity again, we've seen this before with other technologies, that the speed and the velocity and the agility increased significantly. So I will focus a little bit more on what we've done reasonably well since the early days of major digital transformations. And yes, digital transformations happened 3 decades ago. We just didn't call it that. And what we've learned and how we were getting more and more successful was their respective implementations. At the end of the day, the fundamentals, if you will, it is still imperative to have a strategy framework that aligns across all business function, including IT. So true alignment in your strategy. No one goes off on their own. To future-proof our organization's culture. And this means to educate, to engage, and to continue to listen and to work with every stakeholder in an organization to actually have a culture that allows adoption of the solution we are putting in. To ready our technology and data assets. In other words, having an ecosystem that actually allows to execute adequately. We don't necessarily have to have the newest and the latest of everything, but with AI in particular, if we don't have an ecosystem where we can integrate, often in real time, and where we have quality data, then AI will do what it has been set to do for quite a while. It will deliver bad results faster than any other automation that we've seen so far. And then lastly, and that's really important too, to execute with excellence throughout the whole life cycle of a solution. So not just the implementation to go live, but throughout the whole life cycle. And again, I think that's more important with AI than it has been before because of drift. And Patricia is much more able to talk about this from real experience than I ever will be. So throughout our chat here, I will try to touch on several practical AI guidelines that our technology leaders at Fortium have actually learned by experience. So practical guidelines and practical lessons learned.
That's awesome, Christoph. And I think that kind of leads me to kind of go back to Patricia, and I'm actually curious, how do you see the pace of the desire on the client side to achieve success with AI, and how are you helping them, think holistically about what they are about to do?
That's a great question because, there's a lot of CEOs that we talk to that definitely have, the fear of missing out. They are reading about how AI is transforming different aspects of the industry. They're concerned about what their competitors are doing. And it's definitely, and they're, obviously everybody's talking about how quickly the technology is moving. And it seems like, almost every week there's a new aha moment or a new model dropping that can do something more. And so they are anxious, definitely anxious to figure out how to employ AI within their own companies in order to continue to be relevant. And there's definitely an education that needs to happen then, because they need to realize that they need to start thinking about AI as something that is actually going to be woven into their company. In fact, I actually talked to CEOs about how they need to start thinking about AI not just as a technology initiative, but as something like, for instance, if they're hiring new teammates, where they actually have to train those teammates. They have to hire the teammates with the best skills. They need to be able to continue to monitor the performance of those teammates. They need to be able to coach them when they go outside of guardrails and continue to get better. So AI is different from most technology initiatives that's preceded it in that it's non-deterministic, right? So there is a a whole infrastructure, I guess, that or process that needs to be wrapped around AI once you put it into production in order to have it continue to perform well and in order to have it continue to perform responsibly.
Yeah, I love the metaphor you used because when we think about AI agents, it's almost like having this sort of overzealous employee, as you're saying, the idea of bringing in new team members. They want to come in and they want to show you that they can do the job and do it so well. But then in that spirit, that's when they break things, and that's why you need to have the guardrails. So I really
And they do
appreciate
it,
that metaphor. Yeah,
and they do it confidently, right? That's the
that's
thing.
right. With a
AI
straight
will tell
face.
you something so confidently, and you don't know whether to trust it or not. So, definitely understanding everything you need to put in place in order to build that trust with AI is something that, frankly, organizations need to get used to.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And I think for you, Christoph, when I look at your background with SAP implementations and these large ERP systems, a lot of the time these implementations came to the table with a lot of rigor, a lot of systems integrators built a lot of methodologies, a lot of experience, and a lot of structure to manage the risk. When it comes to AI, how are you helping clients sort of realize that it might be maybe a different price point, but the risk factor and the rigor may still be similar?
That's a very good question. Um, I think it's part of what I said before. We got to go back and do the things we've learned over the last few decades continuously and apply them to our AI initiatives as well. Um, Another aspect of it is that in my experience, you are more likely to succeed if you have true alignment. I mentioned that aspect
Yeah,
before, but
yeah,
with alignment comes an engagement model with the rest of the organization that I would call a partnership model. I'm not a big fan of the sponsor term, executive sponsor,
yeah.
because it implies a more remote association with an initiative where you dive in, do a status or progress review, provide a few comments, and then the sponsor is gone for a while. It's certainly a point of escalation if necessary,
I see.
and that's good and necessary. But I actually have seen much more success in a true partnership, a co-leadership model, if you will, because that removes this boundary that we often associate with what's called an IT project. The whole rest of the organization disengages. They
Yeah,
certainly love their status update and progress reviews. Um, Give the CIO a hard time, if you will. And then we move away, and suddenly, like Phoenix from the ashes, the implementation date happens, the project emerges, either as a success or as a failure. That doesn't happen if you have true co-leadership and partnership. My best example actually is one where we had a major customer-facing project that was truly owned by both of us, the sales and marketing side and the IT side in this particular case. We delivered on time, we delivered below budget, we exceeded our best ROI expectations, actually the high case, and we received the best supplier of the year after only 18 months beyond the implementation of the overall project, which wasn't just IT. It had many business components, supply chain components. So I'm not claiming that IT won the best supplier of the year, but the company did through a co-owned and co-delivered initiative. So I think those environments, getting back to your original question about how do you make sure that the organization fully understands the risk, and in such an environment where you co-lead, where your in quote,
yeah,
it's called sponsor is part of the team, um, there is no unknown risks. There are no surprises, at least to them. There are still surprises popping up, but we all know at the same time.
So that way you keep them all close to the center of gravity on
Yes.
the implementation leadership management. Graham,
Yeah.
I want to give you the floor. These are great points. I knew you wanted to talk with Patricia about governance, and I'd love for us to explore that.
Thank you, Ash. Appreciate it. Yes, Patricia, I would love to get your take a little bit more on governance and what's coming to mind as we're talking about this in this conversation. Anything else that you'd like to highlight today and really bring forward for this conversation?
Well, to actually build on what Christoph was talking about, the the governance frameworks I put in place heavily involve the different business leaders because, frankly, the business leaders are the ones that are the subject matter experts. And so any AI solution is built to be trained and to learn and to get better over time. But in order for AI to get better, in order for you to build that trust with the AI system, you need to have the subject matter experts who are reviewing the outputs of the AI system and providing feedback, which is called normally what most people call it is human in the loop review, which is one of the aspects of any like governance framework is that you design, once you put AI into practice, how you're going to do this human in the loop review in order to build up confidence in what the AI system is producing. And that human in the loop has to be from the business. It can't be from IT.
Yeah.
They're the subject matter experts in what is right and what is wrong, and they're the ones that have to be invested in giving AI that feedback. So there's also the monitoring that you have to do of these solutions. So you need to monitor for what's called drift, and drift can happen when the training data gets stale, when there's edge cases that come up that AI was never trained on, when the underlying models may evolve. So all of that can affect how AI is performing. And again, the first people who are going to notice drift is the business. It's not going to be really probably IT. It's going to be the people who understand what the right answers are versus the wrong answers. And so there's definitely a partnership between IT and the business because, as I said, the business is the one that really needs to do this human in the loop and monitoring activities. But when I sit down with organizations to design their governance program, it's all about right sizing governance because governance can be a dirty word to some people, right? And it becomes people think of it as an inhibitor, and AI is such a cool technology. People want to innovate so quickly with it that they will bypass governance, and that's when you get your shadow AI problem, right? Which is the exact thing that you're trying to avoid. So you really need to put governance in place that is truly honed in on figuring out what your real risks are and figuring out how you're going to then mitigate those risks. And you need to educate the organization, you need to educate the business on the fact that these risks are real. So you need to educate the business on the fact that AI will say things very confidently and very definitively that may be very wrong. So that's why things like human in the loops reviews are so important. And once the business, I think, realizes what the real risks are and why that the governance is designed the way it is, you will get their buy-in to continue to be, active participants as opposed to trying to go off to the side and do something on their own.
Patricia, let's talk another minute on that when it comes to that participation, what that's setting up for adoption. When it comes to what a well-led AI transformation and establishing that culture, what are you hearing? What are you seeing on what's really working well or what you feel works well with these types of projects or just this overall organizational transformation?
I think so. AI, as things evolve, I think most people are used to, AI for like the chat GPTs, the Copilot, that sort of stuff, right? And people have been now we're using those solutions for, drafting emails or brainstorming ideas, and it's helping from an individual productivity level. But now you're seeing AI, agentic solutions starting to get built, right? And these agentic solutions, the point is automating certain workflows, really starting to build like a team of AI agents that you can work with, that really will help the organization. Different, back office solutions and even front office solutions will help the organization scale and become better. And those agentic solutions require a different level of governance than a user using, ChatGPT to draft emails. So you really need to right size your governance program based on, as I said, what the risk is. And you need to make sure that the organization understands that, you may just have an AI use policy in place, which talks about what data is permitted and what data is not permitted to use in those individual productivity use cases. That may be fine for that level of use of AI, but as you get more sophisticated in your AI use and you start looking at like agentic solutions, there's a lot more guardrails that need to be put in place. As I said, human in the loop review design, monitoring, incident response. There's different aspects of the governance program that you need to start to consider. And organizations that are successful at this realize that they need to start designing for those aspects of AI as part of the design process. When you start designing the agentic solution, you need to start thinking about how's human in the loop going to work? How are we going to monitor this? What are we going to do if it starts to drift? Are we going to be, do we need a kill switch to kill this, to turn it off, but while we actually tweak the model? So working with organizations that actually start building those type of guardrails in at the beginning during the design process versus thinking about it afterwards, once they've launched the AI solutions, are the ones that are going to be successful.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. Christoph, I want to come back to you, and I'm just curious, are there some top sweet spot use cases that you see a lot of organizations trying to tap into the power of AI in?
My home is manufacturing, and we certainly have numerous opportunities here. On the maintenance side, if you will, visual inspection, reducing the defect rate, preventative maintenance, reducing the or increasing the uptime of the equipment. All of those will benefit from AI. Many of those will probably include what Patricia just described, agentic systems. So the system can actually diagnose, can propose solutions. It also will probably be slow in going all the way to autonomous, simply because when you are on the shop floor, there is a lot of concern about systems, equipment making autonomous decisions. So the human, or I actually like the term expert in the loop even better than the human in the loop, because it implies that the individual who actually makes the decision, who the AI augments, or the system that he or she orchestrates, has deep understanding of not just the context, but the decision-making process and what they see and what they hear. So those are typical shop floor examples. I just had an opportunity to talk with a supply chain executive who just came back from the Gartner conference, and they've been talking about autonomous supply chain, and the need to quickly move on this just to stay competitive in a more and more challenging supply chain, transportation, global procurement environment, or maybe not so global anymore, a right sourced environment. And they will have to move quickly and soon and have to figure out the right way to do that in-house, through implementation providers, service providers, external AI experts. So there are numerous opportunities across all the different business functions. I think we know how much back offices can benefit through the automation of processes that just take too much time and too much personal involvement. You can redesign those workflows and make them more suitable for AI intervention and have the expert in the loop just in the right place to avoid wrong decisions to populate all the way to, let's say, the customer. I think we've heard many examples about the chatbots that customer-facing organizations have already started to implement. There are internal opportunities for chatbots as well, and I could probably go on
Yes.
for another 10 or 15 minutes and give you numerous examples. I think we are an opportunity-rich environment.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The trick, though, will be to make sure that we don't pursue an AI opportunity just because it is there. It has to align with the overall business objectives.
Yeah.
You know, remember I mentioned earlier that our strategic framework needs to be aligned across all business functions. We got to identify those that are truly important to an organization, that have a chance of really creating a measurable ROI that is not measured in doing 5 AI projects and just checking off, I did my 5th success.
Yeah.
That's not the metric. That's not a metric that matters. What matters is when you actually have a truly measurable improvement on some of your key KPIs. You know, this could be in revenue uplift. It could be a cost reduction. It could be something that, like customer sentiment, you know, that's not as easily relatable to a dollar amount. So it doesn't have to be just a dollar amount that is that measures your ROI, but it got to be meaningful to the organization and not just a counter. You know, a little side note, some development organization have measured AI success by how many tokens they consume.
Yeah.
So the more money you spend on AI, the more successful you are. I think they've all stopped by now. I'm not totally sure, but what I've heard, they stopped because that's not a meaningful metric. The meaningful
Exactly.
metric delivers a meaningful outcome to an organization.
Yeah, no, that's really right on point because it's going to be in the wrong direction. I'm going to take a couple of minutes here and share with our audience a little bit of an origin story about the Atlas program. But I want to give you heads up, Christoph and Patricia. I'm going to come back at the end. I'm going to ask you for one signal that you think when you meet your client, if they have that signal in the organization, you have a much better expectation that this company is going to succeed. So I'd love for you to kind of think about what that key signal is, and then we'll wrap up. So just sharing with the audience, the Atlas Leader Program is a program that Graham and I thought about because we've seen in a number of organizations a lot of the challenges that Patricia and Christoph here have talked about, the challenges with how do we go about defining success, how do we go about leading and managing the changes that AI initiatives will actually create. And what we basically put together an experience that is not a training program. I actually look at it more as an opportunity to do what Christoph talked about, the idea of making sure that we create a co-leadership model where we bring the number of people that are working on key AI initiatives and make sure that, number one, they achieve the alignment and understanding of what the objectives are. And then to Patricia's point, understand what is the governance, and yes, reasonably sized to make sure that they achieve the right pace that they want to achieve. So we end up really creating 6 workshop experiences. We also make sure that we bring these teams together in pod sessions where they work on these AI initiatives that they're working on, and then also make sure that they individually have some action learning assignments. So that's what this program is about. We do it for a particular organization, for the team that's leading these AI initiatives. So it's not a public program, it's really more of a special custom-built experience for organizations. And the interesting thing that I've learned, let's say at Cisco or Oracle, we bring leaders from the organization to be part of the faculty of the program to make sure that there is continued input from the leadership team and implementing this leaders building leaders and making sure they learn from the experience that Patricia and Christoph have talked with us about all the years of digital transformation, what the key lessons that these people have seen. So before we wrap up, I'm going to come back to you, Christoph. What's the one signal that will tell you this organization is set up for success?
For me, it's my feel of how broad the buy-in is for a given initiative across an organization. Maybe I'm second dipping on my partnership approach from earlier, but I really want to see that all affected parties are fully committed to doing whatever it takes for the initiative to succeed. And are they all committed? Second, do they actually understand what it is required? Or is this just a lip service? Yes, I will do whatever it takes, but I have no idea what it is, and ask me again when we get there. And lastly, but not the least, is do they actually all agree what the ultimate outcome looks like? Or do they all have totally different expectations of what the result is? Which gets me back to the first one. They obviously are not committed to do the same things because they're expecting different outcomes. So those are the kind of the tests that I would apply early to see if this initiative actually has a chance of succeeding.
Yeah, awesome. Patricia, how about you?
I would say it's the leaders that don't talk about AI as a software project, right? Those are the leaders that I think need to be better educated, right? And it's the leaders that are like, okay, I want AI to go do this, and they view it as a project with a delivery date and a handoff, and once deployment's done, it's done, right? Those leaders don't fully understand, I think, how to use AI successfully. The leaders that actually talk about AI as a key capability that they want to weave into their organization, and they understand that this is going to be something that evolves over time, and it's going to need context and feedback and ongoing attention. And the more they commit to being able to sort of weave AI in and leverage AI, the bigger ROI they'll get. But it is something that is definitely going to be a journey, and it is not a like one and done project.
Yeah, you can't just turn it on and expect it to function. You have to keep monitoring.
Right.
Well, Christoph and Patricia, it's been an amazing conversation. Really appreciate you joining us. And Graham and I are available for organizations that want to implement the Atlas Leader Program. And definitely we would encourage our audience to reach out to Patricia and Christoph, an amazing team at Fortium Partners, working with benchmark enterprise customers and mid-market customers on AI initiatives. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
So thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.